My name is Belma McCaffrey. I'm the CEO and founder of Work Bigger, and I'm also a career and leadership coach. Work Bigger is a career coaching and leadership platform for dissatisfied high achievers who want to find their purpose. So, we really support individuals with getting career clarity and figuring out what they want to do so that they can feel really fulfilled in their work and in their lives. Um, I started on this path because of a personal pain point. I spent all of my 20s having a ton of ambition and wanting to make an impact, but I had no idea what I wanted to do. So essentially, what happened was I spent about a decade going from job to job, trying to figure it out. And it really impacted my confidence, it impacted my well being, and it impacted my energy, my time, my money, all of it. So eventually I went back to business school, and that's where I saw that I wasn't the only one. So many of my friends and my classmates were struggling with the same challenge, and I was like, wow, we're spending a lot of time and money going to grad school, but really, we need to be more intentional, and we don't necessarily need to make these unintentional, right? Or pivots that aren't as well thought out as they could be. So that's eventually led me into coaching. I'm trained with the Neuro Leadership Institute, so I bring a lot of neuroscience, positive psychology, emotional processing tools into our work. And I created the Work Bigger method to help people figure out what it is they want to do and then to action that. And that's really what we're going to be talking about in this session today. So, with that, what we're going to cover today, right, is just for the time that we're together, I really want to focus on you. We got a lot of questions around career clarity. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go through those questions. I'm going to answer them. And then in the chat, just let me know what brings you here. Let me know how what I'm sharing is resonating. If you have any follow up questions, hopefully we'll have time to get into those. And I'll also just share some additional resources with you to help you go deeper with this conversation today. So this does not have to end here. It's really, consider this an introduction to the Work Bigger method so that you can start to figure out what it is that you want. So I'm going to dive right in. Okay, I'm going to make sure I see those slides. Okay, so the first questions that I want to cover is these questions around career pathing. So two questions that I want to highlight is, how do you find the job for you? And then also, right, deciding on the career path and goal setting path. Should I think about engineering management? So, as a coach, I hear these questions all the time like, should I think about this path or that path? Right. So, to answer this question, it really requires two parts. There's internal work that someone needs to do to figure out, what career path they should be on. And then there's a strategy, right? It's taking all of that internal work that you do and then putting it into action. So, to answer this question specifically, I'm going to focus on the internal work, and I'm going to give you some tips and suggestions to go deeper, because there's not enough time spent here, right? We graduate school and we're told, write a good resume and have a good cover letter and go out there and network. And that didn't work for me, and I know it doesn't work for many of you. So I really want to stress doing this the right way. So yeah, with this question, I hear like, I want to find the right path that aligns with me. So with this inward piece, right, doing this internal work, one of the first things that you want to understand is your why. Right, really understanding what drives me. What's my purpose here? What's my intention? Right? What is it that I want to do, and like why? So to help you answer that, one of the first things that you can explore is your interests. Right? And interest is such a big thing. And I know a lot of people get overwhelmed because you can have a lot of interests, but that's okay. So to help you dig deeper, some things to consider are like, what do you care about? Right? What do you find yourself listening to in terms of podcasts? So just start paying attention to your surroundings and what you find yourself gravitating towards, right? What events do you gravitate towards, right? What do you check out on social media that really fuels you? So you want to pay attention to like your emotional reaction, right? And there's always a common thread, right? So I remember when I was in my 20s and I was going through this path, I had a lot of interests. I used to love dancing and learning and all these things, and they all felt really broad. But if you can spend some time to outline and brainstorm what all of your interests are, and then just look for that common thread, right? What do these interests give you? You'll start to see a theme. So just spend some time brainstorming here around your interests. And then the second aspect, or really suggestion with helping you get clear on your why, is asking yourself, what do I stand for? Right. So this piece is really important, right? So consider what events happen in your life that have shaped who you are today, right? What do you get angry about? Right, or what really energizes you, right? So just take these things, and then eventually, as you like start to understand your values and where they come from and what you stand for, you're going to want to match them to the organization. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but an example is, right, if you value relationships, and that's a huge part of what you stand for and what you believe in, right? Authentic relationships, right? What do authentic relationships look like for you at your organization? Right, so you want to match that internal piece to the company, to the work that you're doing. I have a class here which I think Rachel's going to share. It's called How to Find Your Superpower. Right, and your superpower is really, it's the thing that allows you to both stand out, right, and also that helps you to feel really connected to the work that you're doing. And once you can identify your superpower, these things that I'm talking about, understanding your why, your interests, your values, those are a big part of that, right? Once you have clarity on that, you can activate it, and you can be really intentional about how you leverage it. All right, so actually, you know what, I'm just going to put the link here real quick because I see I have access to the chat, and this is a way to get just more support around this piece and to go deeper with this topic, right? If you're wanting to really understand, okay, what is it that I need to do to help me find my superpower? All right, so as I'm sharing this, let me know if there are any questions in the chat. I'm going to move on to the next question. I just see real quick, these are excellent questions. I've been doing a lot of journaling lately. Beautiful. Yeah, so really just take that time to go inward, right? And to ask yourself these bigger questions. That's where that fulfillment piece comes in. All right. Now I'm going to move on to the next question, which is about making a pivot. So I just listed here some of the questions that really stood out to me. Advice for industry changers, right? Going from a very niche industry to another niche industry. How workers with over 20 years of work can pivot into another area. What do employers think about this? If you've been in one industry for a long time, how do you shift gears, right? If you're really on the fence about even looking, how do you decide what to do? And then, pivoting to a new career, especially after a break in work. So what I hear with these questions is, how do I make that transition? How do I connect the dots for employers, right? How do I make them see that I'm skilled enough to do this job that's different from my current experience? So with this, I want to stress that you need a process, right? Pivots are always going to happen. They're a part of our lives and a part of our careers. It's not common today to be in one career, and yeah, one career your entire life. It's not the norm, and that's okay. I know that was the norm many years ago, but that's not, right? So I think it's really important to have a process that allows you to pivot, because transitions can be so hard for us human beings, right? It can be so challenging. Having a process that you go to and that you fall back on will just allow you to feel grounded, and like, I have a roadmap in place to make that pivot. I have a map. So um, I'm always going to go back to starting with the inner work, right? Understanding your why, understanding what allows you to feel connected, what you stand for, all of those things, right? And that can shift a little bit over time, but that's really your solid foundation, right? And then with that, when you have clarity on the inner work, which we talked about a little bit, right? You want to understand what's your story, and you want to incorporate your superpower, your purpose, all of that, really what makes you into your story, right? It's not just about your strengths. They're really connecting to the whole person when you're making that pivot. And you want to incorporate this part of you into your transition story, right? So as you create your story around the transition, you want to answer, like, how did I get here? Like, what is bringing me to this transition piece, right? What's important to you about it, right? And I really want to highlight, don't be afraid to be vulnerable here and just to show like the true care and excitement and passion that you have for this change. So that emotional connection is really foundational when you are communicating that part of you. And then you can move on to the more tactical things, right? Because there's those questions of like, how do I do it? This is a job that, I don't have any experience in. I've been in this industry or this role for 20 plus years. So to change to something completely different requires more experience. So let's work on answering this, right? What skills and experiences are transferable? So it's possible there may not be any transferable skills yet, and that's okay. So I really call, well, when you're questioning that, when you're wondering like, what is transferable here? I call those knowledge gaps, right? It's like the stuff that you don't know, that you're not sure about when it comes to making that pivot. So I really want you to start with, what questions do you have about the transition? Like, what are your knowledge gaps? Right? So some examples could be, how many years experience do I need? Right? What is the one most important skill that I need to make this change? Right? What gaps do I have in my resume? How can I fill those gaps? What education do I need? Right? And then I want you, when you do a brainstorm of all of these knowledge gaps, it's really important that you just get it out of your head and down on paper. Right? Then I want you to go out there and I want you to get those answers, right? By having conversations with individuals, doing research, right? And as you're doing this, you start to build your network, right? And as you're building your network and you're exploring this and you're like starting to fill in these questions, new questions might come in. You're like, okay, well, then how do I make this change? How do I make the pivot? Who do I have to speak with? And that's where I want you to be really direct with your ask, right? Saying, I'm looking for this opportunity, right? If they say, well, you're not qualified yet, I want you to ask, well, what do I need to do to be qualified? Right? And I really like to think of it this as a growth minded strategy. It keeps you progressing and finding solutions versus getting stuck in that feeling of like, I can't do this. All right. So this is a huge important part of the work bigger method. It's growth minded. It keeps you in the process. It keeps you going. It keeps you in action, learning, so that you're not feeling defeated. You're not feeling defeated, and you don't give up, because that transition is possible, right? It just takes doing that research and that work. So I'm going to pause right here and just see what questions are coming up. Awesome. Okay. Relevant skills and experiences are so key. Identifying my knowledge gaps has been so helpful, especially as I connect with people in the industry I'm moving into. Yeah. And it helps to build your network, right? Because what I like about this process is you're being authentic through it. You're not going out there having informational interviews and pretending that you know everything about this industry, or you know the transition. You're being really honest, like, here are my questions, and it allows you to just get those answers and to move forward much faster versus having this experience feel uncomfortable. All right. um, okay, let me see what other questions there are. And I see Rachel said, sorry, Belma. Okay, thank you, Rachel. I appreciate that. And I know she's going to share the class in the wrap up email. But yeah, in that class, I talk about this method, this growth minded process a little bit more. I just think this is really important when you're making a pivot, because it keeps you, again, like, going, learning. It keeps you engaged in the process versus feeling stuck in like what you want is not possible, because it's not true. We've had so many clients make significant pivots, right? And it's really just about having the process to help you with it. All right. I am going to move on to the next question, which is about navigating the early years. I love this question. Someone asked, how does someone navigate making a pivot in their field of work early in their career? Right? How to navigate graduating from college and deciding what to do. So this question is near and dear to my heart, because it was the challenges I experienced with that really led me here to work bigger, right? I want to stress, many of us think it's about the resume and the cover letter, and many of us think it's about identifying the exact role and the exact company, and those are a part of it, but don't start there, right? I think when you're starting out, experience is really important, right? And I really want to stress, don't worry about your first step not being the right one. It's likely that it's not going to be, right? And that's okay. Right. I want you to think that and just have a reframe when we have challenging experiences, they can really shape us, right? And they can help us to see how we can add value in the world. In fact, a big part of the Work Bigger method is looking into your struggles, your pain points, the parts of your career journey or your life that felt really difficult or were challenging. I think these are the things that shape us as human beings, right? Again, like the struggle I felt for about a decade is what led me here. And it led me to build my own company and to solve this big dilemma that I see. And I'm really grateful for that. I wouldn't change that for the world. So as you're navigating your first job, I think it's really important to take some time to ask yourself some questions. And I'm going to put out a few journal prompts here for everyone, right? What in this role really aligns with me? Right. So as you're navigating that first job and you're in it already, right? Allow yourself like just to ask, to be curious in that experience. What in this role really aligns with me? Right? And what doesn't align with me? What doesn't feel so good or what causes me stress, right? Or what causes my brain to hurt? I think that's a huge indicator of something. Um, it just shows that maybe it's not very like skills aligned, right? Also, where do I see myself shining? Right? Or what's energizing me? Right? What type of people do I connect with? So I think it's really powerful to use the early years to be intentional, right? To be intentional, to be willing to explore, to be curious. And I think like if you're doing that, then you're on the right path. That will set you up for your next opportunity. All right. So let me know how this is landing so far. Okay, I see a lot of comments are coming in, but yeah, so I think that intention is really big. And I think doing that earlier, like the sooner you do that, the better. Again, you don't have to have the right path, you don't have to land on the right path. You just need to approach it from a place of curiosity and have some questions in place to help you um, navigate, right? And to help you filter out options for the future. And I think like your first one or two jobs is a perfect thing to allow you to do that. All right. I'm going to move on to question 4, and then I'm going to come back to some of the comments and questions that I see. Christine, Rachel, is that okay? I see a question came in from Christine, Ashley. Okay. Let me know if that's okay, Rachel. I think we're going to have some time for Q&A. All right. Awesome. So the next question I want to talk about is finding company alignment. Right. So some of the questions that came in are like, what are strategies for identifying companies that align with your values to consider pursuing opportunities? What are some non-traditional strategies for finding and obtaining a new job? Right. Where to stop or where to start? How to get a handle on the work environment of a company before signing on? How to find the right fit? And what I hear with these questions is, right, I want to make sure that the company aligns with me. And I love this question, right? Or these questions so much because oftentimes when we're in the job search, we're approaching it from this energy of, I need to make sure that I'm impressing them. But this question, I think, is such a great one because it's saying, I want to make sure it's also a good fit for me. Right. And that's why I love this like company alignment focus. And I think that's huge, right? When it comes to finding career fulfillment and career clarity, you also want to have like your needs met and you need to get clear on what those things are. So the first thing I want to highlight, right, finding company alignment, right, is so much easier to do when you're finding work through community, right? Because you have insight, you have access, right? You're not going into a job blind, you're not making cold calls, right? Instead, you're tapping into other people who are like minded and who are sharing opportunities that they align with. So essentially, the opportunities that are coming to you are a bit more vetted. So obviously, She Geeks Out is a wonderful community for that, right? Everyone, I would go as far as to say, right, a lot of people here have similar values and similar interests. So be have access to communities, right? I really want to stress that. It's why we've also built a community at Work Bigger, right? To make sure that everybody is offering that access to each other and keeping an eye out for each other, because the workplace sometimes can feel like the wild wild west. There's companies that share certain things about their values online but don't necessarily live those values, and then you end up taking a job that doesn't align with you, doesn't speak with you, has difficult bosses. So She Geeks Out, Work Bigger, Ladies Get Paid, other groups like that. So I think the first step to make sure you're finding opportunities that are in alignment, uh, have access to communities that are like-minded. I think that's a big piece. The second piece that I want to highlight is you want to be clear on your values, on what your values are. So I'm going to go back to that. I covered that with the first questions a little bit, right? You want to be clear on your values, what they are, and then you want to match them with the organization. So again, if something that's really important to you is authentic relationships, you want to understand, how does the company embody authentic relationships? And don't be afraid to be direct in your interviews, right? Either in your interviews or in informational interviews that you have with other people in the organizations, right? And just asking questions like, how do you live your values at your company? Right, where do you demonstrate your values? And you'll see, right, you'll see how they answer that question. Are their values integrated in their operations? Are they integrated in their processes? Are they integrated in their marketing and their messaging? Right, so don't be afraid to have that conversation. I think that'll give you a lot of insight into, just that company alignment. Is this company aligned with me? And then non-traditional strategies, I really want to stress. I think one of the best things you can do is to have an authentic process and approach to making a pivot, to figuring out what it is you want to do. And that includes knowing yourself first, right? Knowing yourself and then being able to speak to that with confidence, going out there and speaking your truth, essentially, right? Being honest about who you are and what you want. And I don't think that happens often enough in the job search, because the job search can feel scary. And also there's a level of pressure that comes with that, right? Maybe you have to pay the bills, and that salary piece is really important right now, and that's okay. I want to acknowledge that, and I think that there's a way to be authentic without like showing all of your cards, essentially, but just knowing yourself, knowing what you want, knowing what's important to you, and being grounded in that, and being able to voice your truth, right, while honoring your needs in the job search process, honoring the needs around salary and all of that. Right. And then the other thing is just not jumping to the next thing, like really doing the work to research and to explore opportunities. I think it's very easy, because I think especially when there's a big financial need, and I think that's okay. Like that needs to be considered in this process. But yeah, just do your research, right? If you're not sure, if you're interviewing with an organization and you're not feeling quite confident in how they answer their question around values, ask to connect with someone on the team or someone else on the company, just so that you can have more insight, so that you can go into that opportunity, more grounded. All right. Yeah, I see. Yes to authenticity. Awesome. I'm so glad that resonates. Yeah, I think it's such a big part, and it gets lost because of just all the nerves and all the emotions and all the uncertainty that comes with a job search. And yeah, I think it's important to balance it out, right? I want to honor and respect, and I understand, because I've been through the job search myself, right? All the fear that comes with it, right? But also just having a sense of groundedness in your abilities and the value that you bring, and speaking to who you are. That's really how you're going to find like your match, right? All right, so I'm going to move on to the next question. So this to me felt like a mindset question. It's this question of, how do you balance personal life, caregiving obligations with a desire to earn more money? I love this question too. And what I hear with this question is making more money right now requires more work, right? In a sense. And I can definitely see this. So for example, the early years of building a business, if you're exploring entrepreneurship, requires a lot of energy. When you are making a pivot from, one industry to another, that essentially just requires some more work, some more research. So with this type of question, I really want to stress, like, what is the lowest hanging fruit thing you can do while you have all of these caregiving obligations, right? Or whatever else, whatever other circumstance you have that's taking up a lot of time and energy. I'm going to share a quick story here. It's my burnout story. Work Bigger is not the first business that I started. When I was in business school, I knew I wanted to pursue this path, but I had no idea what it looked like. And I partnered with two of my friends, and we said, we're going to solve this career dilemma and we're going to build a business around it. And just as I was graduating business school, I found out I was pregnant with my first son. And I didn't want to give up on my entrepreneurship path. And at the same time, I really needed the money to support, my family, to help, just to help, yeah, to help feed us. Um, so I took a full time role at a large news organization and said, you know what? I can do this. I'm going to work full time and I'm going to build this business on the side while I'm pregnant. And then I'll have the baby and then I'll figure it out. And it didn't work for me. Things were too challenging. I learned that, well, I had my son and then we ended up shutting down the business because I was really burned out. And I saw that I wasn't really approaching this from a sustainable place. I wasn't building the business in a healthy way. I was really stressed out. I was really worried about the end result versus taking it slow and thinking about the process. I put a lot of pressure on myself, right? And so we shut down that business and I took a break for a couple of months and I said, what is the lowest hanging fruit thing I can do, right? Because I know this is my calling. Building this business is part of what I want to do, but I'm not going to do it in this way. I'm not going to do it in this way that sacrifices my well being, gets in the way of me being a parent. Um, yeah, just sacrifices all of these other things. It kind of defeats the purpose of doing work you love. So I just started by blogging once a week. Once a week, I would write a blog, right? And that's really what I did for, I would say, I don't know how long, maybe a year. And then I cut back to a part time role at my organization. And then eventually I left to build Work Bigger full time. So I just gave myself the grace that I needed. I gave myself extra time. And I started just by doing one small thing that I could handle. Right. So essentially less is more. And it got me here. So I think it's really important to honor your circumstances, to be honest about everything that you have on your plate. I think many of us put so much pressure on ourselves today, especially when you're a high achiever, and just to do it little by little, right? It's okay if this path if you want to earn more money, that's completely possible, right? Just do it from that healthy space. So just ask yourself, what is the lowest hanging fruit thing that I can do to get started on this path today, right? So I just want to share that because that was a huge learning. And that's really where I saw, okay, if I'm going to build a business and if I'm going to do work I love, like truly love, it can't be at the sacrifice of everything else. We have to integrate that health aspect. All right. So those are all the questions that I covered or that I gathered from the questions that came in. I'm going to pause here and I'm just going to take a look at the comments and see what other questions came through. And please just feel free with everything I'm sharing, feel free to share any follow-up question that you have, but we have a few minutes to cover those. And I'm just going to scroll back here. Let's see. Mm-hmm. So Christine says, when I look at job descriptions, I have the key skills, but when I send my resume, I don't think employers are seeing that with the places I've worked. Yeah. So Christine, what comes up for me is I'm curious what your networking strategy is, right? And if you're able to get in front of employers instead of, and maybe you're doing both. But I think that's always helpful to have your resume stand out because I just see a lot of like resumes going into a black hole, right? So um, I don't think employers are seeing that with the places I've worked. And then it's sounding like there might be something around the storytelling piece, right? Like, how are you telling that story of transferable skills? What are the things that you're highlighting? And maybe it just requires getting some support around that because it can be really difficult to do when you're in it all day, right? Like looking at your resume, sending out cover letters, filling out applications. So maybe you need another eye to help you see, like, is this transferable? Um, Okay, and I see this from B Morgan. It sounds like, yeah, similar challenge. I'm doing a lot of what they're asking for already, but I'm still told companies are going with candidates who are better aligned. Yeah, so similarly here, I'm wondering if there's something that needs to shift in the process. Better aligned. So that also feels like it could possibly be a storytelling thing. I'm wondering if there's a way to get some feedback. Sometimes companies don't like to do that. They don't want to give feedback, sometimes for legal reasons. But if you are building a solid relationship in the interview process, they may be able to give you some feedback on where that misalignment might be. What different networking approaches can I take if I currently don't know someone in a specific industry? So I always say start with your current network to start filling those knowledge gaps and then have your current network make referrals, right? And then they may or may not know someone, but you want to be very direct about that specific industry. I also want to stress the importance of tapping into communities. So for example, with Work Bigger, we specifically built it so that there's people in all sorts of different industries so that you have access to a diverse group of individuals, right? So that you're not just relying on cold outreach on LinkedIn. So your personal network and then communities are a big part of that. And then just being direct with that ask, right? I'm looking to speak to people in this industry and I want to learn, XYZ so that people know how to help you. Okay, and I'm just scrolling through their comments. This is such great prep for revising your resume. Awesome. Yay. Okay, there are so many companies out there. It's overwhelming to think about what companies I'd want to work for. I've just been seeing who is hiring and applying. Yes, yes. Maybe there's a different strategy. So, Lauren, this is a really good question. Don't anchor yourself with the companies. Don't anchor yourself with the job role. Anchor yourself with what you want first, right? And then you can start to filter out the companies, right, and the opportunities. And the way you filter out the companies is through the values piece. The more clear you are on your values, right, there's two parts. There's the values and the job role. So the more clear you're on these two things, the more you can filter out opportunities. So I talk a lot more about this in my class, which is free, How to Find Your Superpower. I'm just going to post a link here again. But this is really important because what I see happening is that I see people wanting to make a pivot, and the first thing they do is they go on LinkedIn or they go on Indeed to look for job opportunities, and it feels so overwhelming. And that overwhelm, right, is it essentially like stops you in your tracks and it keeps you from making progress. So I don't recommend that. I've done that myself. When I was trying to figure out my own pivot, I actually ended up buying, this is like laughable now, but I ended up buying this ginormous book called The Big Book of Jobs because I thought if I see the opportunity out there, right, then I'll know. I'll know what to do, but it doesn't work like that. You want to anchor yourself in yourself, right? In what's most important to you, what you're looking for so that you can really filter out all of the noise. So I hope you register for that class. It just will help you figure out the superpower piece. That superpower piece is, yeah, what I think is needed to help you build a strong foundation. All right, so let me see here. I get the benefit. Okay, Lauren, I think it's the same. Yeah, same Lauren. I get the benefit of informational interviews, but how do you do this in terms of timing? If I see a job posted today, do I apply right away or do I want to try to make connections and set up informational interviews first? How do you choose who to have an informational interview with? If it's someone involved in the hiring process or on the team that position would work with, why would they do an informational when they have actual interviews to do? Yeah. So to me, this feels like it's a little late in the strategy, right? So you want to get to those informational interviews before, right? You want to get your foot in the door before they're even maybe like starting to schedule those interviews. So this aligns with how I answered that first question. If you have clarity on the opportunities that you want, you are driving the bus. You're not waiting for these interviews to come to you, right? And then you're submitting your resume and cover letter and waiting. You can do that. That is one method. But if you're finding that that's not working for you, it may be time to change your strategy, and that's okay, right? I also something that also like if you do see a job on LinkedIn, for example, that you really are excited about, you could see if you have second or third connections to help you get in the door faster. So that's another suggestion that I recommend, right? And then also, I do want to say if you do see a job that's posted today, it's possible, and I don't want to discourage you, but it's possible that that may be filled. I know companies sometimes post jobs on LinkedIn and they have to do it, but they're already filling it internally. So I'm just hearing, Lauren, that you may need to pivot your strategy, and that's not to discourage you. That's really just to help you take a step back and to think about like the big picture of how you're approaching this, because it's possible, and you may not need to do too many things differently, but you just want to get your foot in the door a little sooner. So I hope that resonates. Um, okay. Perfect. Is the class a certain day or time, or is it self-paced? It's self-paced. It's an hour class, and actually, yes, you can register for it, and it'll go into your inbox, and you can watch it anytime. Rachel, who's asking that question, I hope that answers. But yeah, it's self-paced. It's not a live class, so you can watch it at any time. You register, and you'll get it in your inbox. All right. So I see that we have 5 minutes left. I'm just looking at the rest of the comments. Any other questions from anyone, either on getting that career clarity or figuring out like how to activate that career clarity, right? Let me know. I feel like a jack of all trades and a master of none with the experience I've had. Is it recommended to focus more on developing specific skills, or is it okay to still have a wide range of skills that I'm not a master of? So that depends on what you want. Um, the question that comes up for me when I read that is, what is it that you want? What is it that you're pursuing? Right? So do you hear that? Like I think that's really really important. Um, because then again, then you can drive that bus. You may need to develop specific skills, but maybe you don't, right? So Linnea, I would say, how clear are you on what you want, right? So I think that's the question, to sit with. All right. And yeah, you're welcome, Laura, and you're welcome, Rachel. um, all right, any other questions? Maybe we have time for one more. Okay, in the meantime, if there are no other questions, I just want to say thank you so much for spending this hour with me and for sharing your questions that are so thoughtful. And I hear that desire from all of you to want to figure out what it is that you want to do. I hope you register for the How to Find Your Superpower class and really look at this as the first step to getting the career clarity that you're looking for. I would just be, yeah, so honored to support you. And if you have any questions, you can always